In this episode of True Crime Black, we look at one of the most egregious cases of police malpractice we've covered on the show. From the very beginning, the actions taken by the police jeopardized the investigation of a deceased black woman. Were their blunders just the result of ineptitude? Or is there something more behind it? With that said, let's get started. On the night of September 17, 2009, Mitrice Richardson disappeared without a trace. Mitrice, a 24-year-old graduate from Cal State Fullerton, had been released from jail at the Malibu-Lost Hills Sheriff's Station around midnight, without any of her belongings except the clothes she wore. Stranded with no money, purse, cell phone, or means of transportation, she had no way to make her way home. Despite that, her family would make a gruesome discovery in an isolated area more than 6 miles away from the patrol station. As the investigation into what happened to Mitrice began to unfold, the world would become aware of just how disgustingly inept the police were in this case. In fact, one could argue that the reason for this case being unsolved can be drawn right back to the beginning of the investigation. As one follows the trail, they are met with more and more questionable decisions by those we should be able to trust to give us answers in a case like this. To this day, we have still not received those answers, and we are left wondering if the police even want us to find them. This is the case of Mitrice Richardson. Mitrice had recently completed her college education, earning a psychology degree just 4 months prior to that fateful night in 2009. She had aspirations of pursuing graduate studies and becoming a child psychologist, with a particular interest in supporting children within the foster care system. Her mother, Mitrice Sutton, fondly remembers Mitrice as a vibrant presence throughout her upbringing. She described her as a joyful ball of energy. Her aunt, Lauren Sutton, vividly echoes that sentiment. She was a beauty queen, she was a cheerleader, and she was an amazing student, Lauren recalls. She was very loving, a vivacious personality, full of life. She would walk into a room, and she would make sure that everyone took notice. On September 16, 2009, Mitrice left her secretarial position at a freight forwarding service in Santa Fe Springs earlier than usual. Her boss later informed detectives that Mitrice appeared giddy and excessively excited, seemingly floating around the warehouse. Mitrice made a stop at her Aunt Lauren's residence in Inglewood, only to find that Lauren was away on a business trip. In a peculiar act, Mitrice scattered a collection of her business cards across Lauren's porch and discreetly tucked some among the plants. One of the most prevalent aspects of this case is the question of Mitrice's mental health. For that reason, her mother was asked about it a lot. Mitrice has made it no secret that there were times when she felt that something was off with her daughter. Those concerns didn't come until much later in Mitrice's life. According to Mitrice, it was not until closer to the time of the tragic incident that Mitrice began to question if something might be wrong. She explained a lot of this during various interviews. Mitrice recalled receiving perplexing text messages from Mitrice that were almost completely incoherent. Her mother would ask her if something was going on, and referenced the text messages as a reason for her concern. Mitrice would seemingly always have a way of dismissing it or giving an explanation that sufficed at the time. Mitrice spent her childhood residing with her mother and stepfather in the San Gabriel Valley. She graduated from South Hills High School but occasionally visited her father and was temporarily staying with her great-grandmother, Mildred, in South Los Angeles at the time of her disappearance. As Mitrice prepared to apply for graduate school, she undertook an internship during her final year of college under the guidance of clinical psychologist Dr. Rhonda Hampton. Dr. Hampton recollects moments when Mitrice's behavior raised concerns. She clarified, though, that they were subtle behaviors and nothing overt. On that ill-fated night, Mitrice set off northward in her Honda Civic, eventually arriving at Jeffrey's restaurant in Malibu. Known for its stunning ocean views, celebrity sightings, and captivating lights, the establishment took all of her attention. From the moment Mitrice entered the parking lot of Jeffrey's, her behavior became increasingly peculiar. The valet, later providing a deposition, described her vehicle as ransacked and in a state of disheveled chaos. Mitrice then unexpectedly entered the valet's car, where he witnessed her rummaging through his collection of CDs. Concerned, he asked about her well-being, to which she responded cryptically with the words, "It's subliminal." Caroline Paris Martin, the hostess at Jeffrey's restaurant on that night in 2009, shared her account of what the valet relayed to her regarding his initial interaction with Mitrice. According to Caroline's recollection, Mitrice initiated a conversation with the valet that involved an unfamiliar language of numbers, and then asked him if he understood it. The valet told her that he did not understand it, to which Mitrice replied, "Well, I'm here to avenge Michael Jackson's death." Caroline proceeded to seat Mitrice at a table by herself, where she placed an order for a $65 Kobe New York steak and an Ocean Breeze cocktail. "I noticed that she had left her table and walked over to join another table occupied by a large party," Caroline recounted. Members of that dinner group later told the detectives that Mitrice was showing signs of being mentally unbalanced, possibly displaying traits of someone with a mental illness. Like the hostess, they remembered her communicating in an incoherent manner. The staff talked it over with their boss and decided to call the police, believing that they would get Mitrice the help she needed. In a matter of minutes, 3 deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department arrived at the restaurant. Mitrice underwent a field sobriety test, which she reportedly passed. During a search of her car, the deputies discovered a small amount of marijuana, less than an ounce, located in the console. The manager from Jeffrey's, who witnessed the search, later informed investigators about additional items found. According to the manager, the deputies discovered empty pill bottles, 2 full gallons of Smirnoff vodka, half a case of Tecate beer, and a partially consumed container of tequila in the trunk of Mitrice's car. Following the search, Deputy Armando Lerrero, the arresting officer, proceeded to handcuff Mitrice and placed her in the back seat of his patrol car. The employees at Jeffrey's were under the impression that Mitrice would be taken for a mental health evaluation. But contrary to their expectations, Deputy Lerrero drove her to the Malibu-Lost Hills Sheriff's Station, where she was formally booked, fingerprinted, and put into a jail cell. The journey from Jeffrey's to the Malibu-Lost Hills Sheriff's Station in Calabasas covered a distance of approximately 20 miles. The deputy had to drive through dimly lit and winding roads that cut through the Santa Monica Mountains. During this time, Latice received a call from Mitrice's great-grandmother, Mildred, who had been contacted earlier by the restaurant employees seeking assistance from Mitrice's family. Alerted to the situation, Latice immediately called the police and got in touch with another deputy. During her conversation with the deputy, Latice was informed that her daughter was en route to the jail. Concerned for Mitrice's well-being, Latice asked if Mitrice would be released that same night. If she was, Latice was going to drive down there and pick her up so that she wouldn't be wandering around a strange area by herself. The deputy assured her that she would get a phone call once Mitrice was booked. However, the deputy in question, Yoav Shalev, later admitted that his shift concluded shortly after that phone call and that he never relayed that information to the commanding officers on duty. At around 10 p.m., Mitrice reached the Malibu-Lost Hills patrol station. LASD jailer, Sharon Cummings, conducted a search of Mitrice and placed her in booking cell number 1. Cummings proceeded to fingerprint Mitrice, capture her mugshot, and conduct a warrant check, which yielded no results. Notably, Mitrice had no prior criminal record. During a deposition, jailer Sharon Cummings testified that she observed no indications of mental illness or instability in Mitrice's behavior, and nobody informed her about any earlier instances of Mitrice acting erratically. Cummings stated that she did not notice anything unusual about Mitrice's conduct. According to Cummings, Mitrice appeared coherent and polite, engaging in a conversation about their respective music preferences throughout the booking process. Arresting Deputy Armando Lerrero, who had just completed a 17-hour double shift that night, made no mention of Mitrice's peculiar behavior in his incident report. During the deposition, Loureiro testified that no one at Jeffries indicated that Mitrice had a mental disorder and that she seemed completely normal to him. However, an email that emerged during the civil lawsuit appears to contradict Loureiro's testimony directly. In the email, sent 3 days after Mitrice's disappearance, Loureiro's supervisor, Lieutenant Scott Chu, informed Malibu-Lost Hills Captain Tom Martin that he had discussed the matter with Loureiro. Chu stated that the deputy hard-booked Mitrice into jail because she had displayed some scattered thinking at Jeffries. Although she was not intoxicated, the email indicated that Loureiro felt she was acting unusual and was uneasy about just letting her go. The truth of the matter is, when you have a woman exhibiting such bizarre behavior, claiming to be from Mars, sitting with unfamiliar individuals, reading their palms, and speaking in a made-up language, you don't need an advanced degree in psychology to recognize that person should be taken for evaluation, asserts Dr. Rhonda Hampton. It is important to note that the valet, the hostess, and the manager at Jeffries all provided depositions, testifying that they explicitly told the deputies present at the scene that Mitrice's behavior was peculiar and unstable. However, during the course of the lawsuit, Caroline and other Jeffries employees were perplexed when they were asked by the Sheriff's Department's attorneys to sign sworn declarations that omitted their accounts of Mitrice's erratic conduct. "Frankly, I believe they were trying to protect themselves," Caroline stated. "They removed many crucial details that made it evident she was not okay and potentially posed a risk if left alone." In the valet's declaration, which was drafted by county attorneys, handwritten corrections were made that weren't consistent with what he told deputies. The valet affirmed that he spoke with at least 2 of the deputies present that night and stated that one of them referred to Mitrice as a ding, which is a derogatory term for someone who is mentally handicapped. The valet also added that he informed them that Mitrice might be a danger to herself or others. Mitrice's mother called the station the next morning around 5:30 a.m., only to learn that her daughter had been released hours before. Early on the morning of September 17, 2009, Mitrice was spotted nearly 6 miles away in the backyard of Bill and Karen Smith's home. Karen Smith said that she and her late husband Bill spotted Mitrice from their upstairs bathroom window. At this point in the morning, Mitrice's mom had already called the patrol station again, frantic in asking to file a missing persons report. There was no apparent urgency by deputies to check out this sighting. It took them nearly 2 hours to get to her home. For 11 months and across a 20-square-mile area, the search for Mitrice Richardson persisted. Throughout this time, her family and friends tirelessly implored the Sheriff's Department for information. They repeatedly asked a crucial question. Was there any video footage of Mitrice at the patrol station on that fateful night? It wasn't until 4 months after Mitrice's disappearance that a meeting took place between the family and then Sheriff Lee Baca. During that meeting, then captain of the Malibu-Lost Hills, Tom Martin, acknowledged the existence of video footage capturing Mitrice at the station. Finally, in April 2010, the family was granted permission to view the footage. According to her mother, Mitrice has a moment in the video where she appears to lose control. She slings onto the meshing of the cell and looks like she's trying to break it in order to escape. She described watching it as truly bizarre. In January 2010, several teams formed and executed what the LASD called one of the largest searches in Sheriff's Department history. Drones soared over Malibu Canyon in April, and investigators ran down a rumored sighting of Mitrice in Las Vegas in July 2010. The searches provided no results that would help move the case forward. It would be another month before the family got answers. Sadly, those answers only brought about more questions. On August 9, 2010, approximately 11 months after Mitrice Richardson's disappearance, California State Park Rangers embarked on a deep hike into the rugged terrain of Dark Canyon. Their objective was to search for signs of an illegal marijuana farm that had previously been operated by a Mexican drug cartel. A year prior, authorities had raided the farm, uprooting and destroying over 1,000 plants. The Rangers sought to determine if the cartel had returned. instead of finding evidence of the drug operation, they stumbled upon something much more grim: skeletal human remains. It would later be confirmed that the remains belonged to Mitrice Richardson. Her lifeless body was discovered naked and partially mummified, concealed beneath layers of mulch, twigs, and leaves. The remains had become obscured over time. Tragically, her skull and spinal cord were detached from the rest of her skeleton. The events that later unfolded in Dark Canyon remain a subject of dispute. The park rangers immediately contacted the Malibu-Lost Hills Sheriff Station to report their discovery. In response, the LASD's Air 5 helicopter was dispatched, transporting homicide detectives and members of the search and rescue team to the ravine. The plan was for Air 5 to subsequently airlift the coroner's team to process the scene. However, due to unforeseen circumstances, the helicopter was diverted twice to rescue stranded hikers located miles away. As a result, by the time the helicopter returned to Dark Canyon, the sun was setting, and Air 5 was running low on fuel. In contradiction to Assistant Chief Coroner Ed Winter's guidance, the LASD homicide detectives made the decision to collect the remains and transport them out of the area. The coroner's report indicates that the lead LASD homicide detective believed he had obtained permission from a different member of the coroner's team. This was a way of justifying their actions. The decision not to leave the remains overnight raised questions and drew criticism. Sheriff Villanueva defended the choice, citing a lack of personnel to secure the site during the night. He explained that the department operated with minimal resources, which had always been the case. Individuals familiar with police procedures found these explanations inadequate. Police procedures expert Roger Clark dismissed the reasoning, stating, "These are flimsy excuses that don't hold water." He emphasized that once human remains are discovered, except under exceptional circumstances such as an imminent fire or flood, the site should be preserved to consider the possibility of foul play. The following day, when the coroner's team attempted to return to the scene, none of the individuals who had been present the previous day accompanied them. Neither the homicide detectives nor any members of the search and rescue team were present. Consequently, the coroner's team struggled to locate the site where Mitrice's remains had been found. Initially, they claimed that they had been dropped in the wrong canyon by LASD's Air 5 helicopter. However, a subsequent investigation revealed that the coroner's team had forgotten their GPS device, which contained the precise coordinates of the site. In other words, they lied. It took an additional 2 weeks for the coroner's team to return to the actual site on August 25, 2010. During this visit, they discovered 9 more of Mitrice's bones. Sadly, that wouldn't be the end of the horrifying discoveries. Months later, when Lettice and a group of family members, accompanied by independent anthropologist Claire Koff, hiked to the Dark Canyon site, they made a horrifying discovery. They found one of Mitrice's finger bones buried under a patch of dirt. The coroner's team was notified, and they eventually revisited the scene again in February 2011, where they discovered even more of Mitrice's bones. These findings left no doubt in Lettice's mind that her daughter had been murdered. The distance alone raises questions about how Mitrice ended up in that remote canyon. Dark Canyon is so rugged that Mitrice's loved ones had to be escorted by the Malibu search and rescue team when they visited the site. The terrain was treacherous, requiring them to wear helmets, protective suits, and use ropes and harnesses to navigate giant boulders. Considering Mitrice's mental health crisis, it seems unlikely that she could have made it from the Malibu-Lost Hills station in Calabasas to Bill and Karen Smith's house in Monte Nido, a distance of nearly miles. Moreover, she would have had to travel at least another mile to reach the location where her remains were discovered in Dark Canyon, with her clothes scattered hundreds of feet down the ravine. The circumstances surrounding her journey are highly questionable and disturbing. On the day Mitrice was laid to rest, her family experienced yet another distressing incident. Claire Koff, the forensic anthropologist assisting the family, conducted her own independent examination. Inside Mitrice's body bag, she made a shocking discovery. There was a bag containing Mitrice's clothing that had never been sent to the crime lab for testing. Kliakoff's report revealed that jewelry was still entangled in Mitrice's hair, along with insect casings, all of which could have provided valuable evidence. They were brazenly left uncollected by the investigators. For Mitrice's family, this was just yet another indication that the police did not care about solving the mystery of what happened to her. The biggest shame about this case? The focus is not where it should be. Mitrice may have been brutally murdered after suffering a mental breakdown, but we instead need to focus on the shoddy police investigation. How could a law enforcement team be inept in every step of an investigation? For some, that ineptitude seemed intentional. In other words, there is a suspected cover-up in this case. They see it as the only explanation for how the police continued to make the wrong move time and time again. For others, the ineptitude is actually just indifference. There is a belief that Mitrice's disappearance was not treated with any sense of urgency because she was a young black woman. Statistically, those cases are not treated with much of a priority. It also doesn't help that the media coverage followed the same pattern. Her parents were awarded $450,000 each in a wrongful death suit, and have put up a $20,000 reward for anyone who can provide information that would move this case in the right direction. Until then, the case of Mitrice Richardson remains a mystery.